Hello and welcome to this technical and business writing presentation, Letters of Application and Letters of Adjustment, produced for Temple College. This presentation covers the similarities and differences of two types of technical communication commonly encountered in the professional world, both of which students will be producing this semester in English 2311. The presentation will begin with overviews of the letter of application and the letter of adjustment. It will then examine various characteristics and standards of excellence common to all technical communication, pointing out the different ways these attributes and standards apply to the two letter types. Finally, we will review good practices that technical writers should always be mindful of. This presentation has three main goals. 1. To learn the features of the letter of application and of adjustment. Students should have a solid grasp of where the forms overlap and where they diverge. 2. To strengthen student understanding of the fundamental characteristics of technical writing. And 3. To reinforce student understanding of and commitment to excellence in technical writing. The fundamental characteristics and standards of excellence of technical writing are repeatedly stressed in this course in order to help students develop a habit of producing highly professional, ethical work. Part 1. Overview. The letter of application is a type of business communication students are likely to have some experience with. Sometimes referred to as a cover letter, the letter of application is submitted, along with other materials including a resume, to a potential employer for the purpose of securing an interview and, if the applicant is suited to the position, mutually beneficial employment. The application is usually a page long and almost never longer than 2 pages. A good letter of application creates a strong first impression and helps the hiring manager to interpret the resume and other materials in coming to a decision about granting an interview. The letter of application has a basic 4-part structure. In the introduction, the applicant identifies where he or she learned about the position, specifically identifies the job he or she is interested in, states his or her wish to be considered for the position, and forecasts the rest of the letter. For example, in the introduction the applicant may mention retail experience, which lets the hiring manager know that later on in the employment section they will be discussing their retail experience. The applicant will also discuss their education and employment, and they're going to emphasize whichever one of those is most relevant to the position being sought. Usually the aspect being emphasized is going to be coming first in the letter. Finally, the writer will conclude. They will reference their resume if such a reference has not already been made. They will request an interview, and they will give the hiring manager information about how they can be contacted to arrange an interview. On the other hand, we have the letter of adjustment, which is written in response to a claim letter or complaint from a customer. The purpose of the letter of adjustment is to retain or regain the goodwill of the customer. The specific audience is the customer. The letter informs the customer of how his or her problem will be addressed, or helps the customer to solve the problem himself or herself. The letter should be in line with the company's adjustment policy. Terms that apply to the tone of the letter include positive, respectful, gracious, and courteous. The letter displays awareness of relevant ethical and legal issues. For example, if the customer has complained about a defective product, the writer may express regret that the product, quote, failed, but not wish to call the product defective, as that might be used in a court case as admission of a defective product. When the writer has good news for their customer, they might write a letter of full or partial adjustment. The structure for one of these would be something along the lines of they would open by expressing regret about the problem while carefully avoiding admission of greater liability than intended. Then they might describe the actions already taken by the organization, followed by actions that the organization is willing to take further. Having done this, they empathetically offer adjustment to the customer and conclude politely indicating a desire for a continued business relationship. Often the organization will be willing to offer partial adjustment for the sake of goodwill, even when it perceives the customer as the party at fault. Sometimes, however, adjustment is just not going to be reasonably providable, in which case the writer will send a refusal. The writer's goal is still to maintain goodwill with the customer, so he or she will open with a statement of context or buffer in which they express empathy with the customer. They will then give a statement of facts explaining why a refusal is being made. Next, they will give the refusal itself, and finally they will close with a statement of goodwill indicating a desire to continue having a relationship with the customer. Based on what you've heard so far, the two letter types under consideration might sound quite different from one another. However, in the next 3 sections, we will discover that for all the particular points where they diverge, they share many more fundamental similarities. We will begin exploring these similarities in Part 2, Characteristics of Technical Communication. Technical writing addresses particular readers. The writer will consider specific individual readers or a reader profile based on anticipated characteristics of the reader. The writer considers the responsibilities of the reader, what the reader's interest is, the writer's relationship with the reader, and the possibility of readers beyond the intended audience. The hiring manager is tasked with finding the best suited applicant to the job. So his or her interest is in whether or not the applicant is suitable, not in the applicant's life story, not how the job is the missing puzzle piece in the applicant's life, not about the string of dead pets that the writer needs to rebound from. In a letter of adjustment, the customer wants to know, on his own behalf, but often on behalf of their organization, what will be done to address the problem that they have with your organization's product or service. The customer may be interested in an explanation, but has no interest in excuses. Technical writing helps readers solve problems. The writer should make the reader's task as easy to correctly accomplish as possible. Technical writing facilitates the accomplishment of goals through correct, efficient communication. Its purpose is to persuade or inform, not to entertain. A letter of application should help the hiring manager to determine the writer's suitability for a job. All other things being equal, the applicant whose suitability is more clearly conveyed has an advantage. A letter of adjustment should help the customer to solve his or her problem, or to understand why the company is not responsible for the problem. If needed, it should point out alternative solutions to the customer. It should never create new problems. Technical writing reflects the organization's goals and culture. The writer should produce communication that furthers the organization's goals and establishes or reflects the organization's values. By demonstrating an awareness of the organization's goals and culture, the applicant demonstrates that he or she will fit in at the organization and maintain message discipline. The writer of a letter of adjustment speaks on behalf of his or her organization, and therefore must have a thorough understanding of the organization's policy in responding to complaints. If he or she is rude, the organization will be seen as rude. The writer works under the assumption that the letter may become public. Technical writing is produced collaboratively. Technical writers work together to produce better documents than they can create alone. Though it may not be obvious, the writer of an application often relies on several collaborators, including professional advisors, bloggers, podcasters, friends, and associates. The writer of the letter of adjustment will consult organizational policy and/or his or her colleagues to determine appropriate action on a complaint-by-complaint basis. Technical writing uses design to increase readability. The technical writer strives to produce attractive and professional communication, to facilitate navigation of documents, and to facilitate comprehension of documents. The letter of application should adhere to appropriate formatting and structure. It is a business letter and should look like one. The reader should be presented with information in an orderly and sensible way. He or she should not have to hunt for information. The letter of adjustment is subject to the same concerns and rules. Part 3. Measures of Excellence. Honesty. The writer must tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That may sound like a joke, but dishonest communication hurts people. It can result in fraud, injury, death, even economic collapse. Dishonest communication can also result in serious legal consequences, both for the writer and for the writer's organization. Nobody wants care from an unqualified doctor. Nobody wants to live in a building that isn't built according to strict code. An applicant who misrepresents his or her qualifications potentially places himself or herself, the organization, the organization's clients, and the general public at risk. The fraudulently hired applicant and the organization may be subject to civil and criminal penalties. A letter of adjustment that misrepresents the efficacy, reliability, or safety over the organization's product or service potentially puts everyone at risk. The writer and organization may be subject to civil, criminal, and informal penalties, such as bad PR. Clarity. The writer must make sure their communication has one, and only one, easily understandable meaning. Unclear communication can be just as dangerous as misleading communication. Unclear communication also produces needless expense, lost time spent deciphering unclear information, and lost money providing support to customers who have been given unclear information. Hiring managers do not have the time or patience to decipher what an applicant was trying to say, nor do they have the time to interview applicants who, through a lack of clarity, miscommunicated their qualifications for the position. The letter of adjustment often includes directions for solving the customer's problem. Unclear language may result in the customer not understanding that they are being provided with such instructions, or believing the instructions are ineffective after failing to follow them correctly. Accuracy. The writer must confirm that the information they provide is accurate. An applicant who misidentifies his or her own job title brings his or her competence or diligence into question and may be unwittingly claiming skills and experience he or she does not have. Incorrect information about the company or position the applicant is applying for indicates a lack of research. Giving a customer inaccurate instructions in a letter of adjustment or an inaccurate description of the adjustment the organization is planning to make is potentially dangerous and will certainly result in a further erosion of goodwill between the customer and the organization. Comprehensiveness. The writer should provide his readers with all the information they need, including background information on topics readers may be unfamiliar with, sufficient detail for comprehension, and attach supporting materials. In a letter of application, this means having supporting material where appropriate, such as transcripts and references. The application should include all requested information specified in the job posting. The letter of adjustment should give enough information for the customer to completely understand the position and steps the organization is taking with regard to the issue. Accessibility. The writer should ensure that it is easy for readers to find the information they need. In a letter of application, the position sought should be clearly indicated in the introduction. In a letter of adjustment, the adjustment being offered, or the company's refusal to make adjustment, should be made clear in a dedicated paragraph. Conciseness. The document should be useful to a busy reader. This means no unnecessary information and no stilted prose. A job applicant is given limited space in which to demonstrate his or her suitability for a position. The applicant should not waste that space on irrelevant experience or on showing off their vocabulary. In a letter of adjustment, Giving the customer bad news is upsetting. Making the customer wait unnecessarily for bad news is insulting. Drawn-out explanations are likely to come across as excuse-making. Professional appearance. Technical documents should appear neat and professional. A neat application with a professional appearance produces a strong first impression, like an applicant arriving to an interview with a neat professional appearance. An unprofessional adjustment letter shows an insulting lack of respect for the customer and his or her grievance. Correctness. The document should adhere to proper grammar, punctuation, mechanics, and usage. If a professional appearance is like the clothes an applicant wears to an interview, correctness is like the answers the applicant gives during the interview. Correctness may not salvage a bad first impression, but incorrectness can easily ruin a good first impression. As with professionalism, poor attention to correctness will cause the customer to believe that the writer of an adjustment letter is unconcerned with or incompetent to solve his or her issue. Part 4. Good practices. In any technical communication, it's important to consider your audience. Respect the reader by using a professional, courteous tone. Respect the reader's needs by providing accurate, comprehensive information that helps the reader solve problems efficiently and effectively. And respect the reader's time by providing concise, accessible information. Always consider your purpose. Write with what you wish to accomplish in mind. What do you want your readers to know, believe, or do? Be concise. Do not waste you and your audience's time and energy by conveying information that does not serve a purpose. Finally, consider your reputation. In the professional world, your credibility and the credibility of your organization depend on the accuracy and professionalism of the work you produce. Remember that technical communication is a record that can, and sometimes will, reach readers beyond your intended audience. Make sure that you and your organization will not be embarrassed when that happens. This concludes our presentation, Letters of Application and Letters of Adjustment. Thank you for your time and attention.